Very interesting.
I think they look at you like a guy who they're worried about because you don't toe the line.
They should be.
You're like a 90s liberal. You're like liberals back when they were more reasonable before they became leftists. And now every liberal kind of has to be a leftist. It's not if you want to be on the team, you got to subscribe to the most fringe ideas that the team is promoting.
What's happening, everybody? Joe Rogan recently sat down with Bill Maher on his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience. Joe Rogan and Bill Maher discussed the growing gap between classic liberals and the woke left. With that said, let's watch Joe Rogan and Bill Maher lay waste to the woke left. Let's go.
Okay, and I find that very interesting.
I think they look at you like a guy who they're worried about because you don't toe the line.
They should be.
You're like a 90s liberal. You're like liberals back when they were more reasonable before they became leftists. And now every liberal kind of has to be a leftist. It's not if you want to be on the team, you got to subscribe to the most fringe ideas that the team is promoting. And I get in trouble with that too. It's such a, I mean, there's so many, like Joe List has talked about that recently, the comic Joe List, very funny guy. And he was talking about he's like, I'm a 90s liberal. He goes, what? I didn't change. It's like everybody else kind of changed. It just got real weird, like what you're allowed to disagree with and not to disagree with. And, you know, it's strange.
I'm always trying to make the case that liberal is a different animal than woke.
Yeah.
Because it is. And you can be woke with all the nonsense that now implies, but don't say that somehow it's an extension of liberalism.
Right.
Because it's most often actually an undoing of liberalism. So you can have your points of view and your positions on these things, but don't try to piggyback on what I've always believed. I have always believed, as liberals do, for example, in a colorblind society, that the goal is to not see race at all anywhere for any reason.
Yes.
That's what liberals always believed all the way through. Obama, going back, Kennedy, everybody, Martin Luther King. That's not what the woke believe. They believe race is first and foremost the thing you should always see everywhere, which I find interesting because that used to be the position of the Ku Klux Klan, that we see race first and foremost everywhere.
Yeah.
So, again, you can have that position, but don't say that's a liberal position. You're doing something very different.
I think the idea behind it, I think I understand their idea. The idea is that the society is imbalanced. And so in order to address that imbalance, you're going to prop up as many minorities as possible, make as many opportunities for minorities as possible, and get it to a position where there are, like, white people are a minority. And so that's not a concern anymore. And that through that, somehow or another, you'll achieve equality. I think the way to achieve equality is your way. I think the color...
Hey, if you like watching videos like this one, like, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. Let's get back to the video.
Blind way is the way to really, truly achieve equality and to truly judge people just on their merits. But also recognize that if we don't address the problems in this country as far as like how disenfranchised some people are and how horrible some communities are that people grow up in and people find themselves stuck in with no recourse, no way out, no role models, no nothing, no financial opportunities. That's what our real problem is in this country, more than it is race. It's extreme poverty and extreme crime, and that these things don't get addressed over and over and over again. And in fact, a lot of the policies that you see coming from places like San Francisco and Portland, and they just exacerbate it. You're just seeing stores close because, like, okay, you can't just steal. Can't just have everybody just walk into Walmart and steal. I was watching a video where they were showing a Walgreens and they had everything chained up. Chained.
Oh, yeah.
Chains.
Even minor little things.
Yeah, little things.
Like frozen food dinners.
Yeah. Yeah, they had the frozen food section chained off.
No, again, that's not... Liberalism was never... shoplifting is progressive.
Right. Yeah.
And we weren't interested in legalizing shoplifting, or as I guess we should call it, justice shopping. But, you know, in Minnesota, for example, I think it was Minneapolis, after the George Floyd murder and the riots, I think there was a movement to disband a lot of the police, and they did. I think a lot of the police were let go, or somehow the police force was a lesser force than it was. And what happened was, of course, crime went up in certain areas, and a lot of the officers who had been fired or let go or quit, or for whatever reason they weren't on the force anymore, they were hired as private security. By who? The rich people who could afford to do it. So their neighborhood stayed safe. So that wasn't exactly, I thought, a victory for liberalism.
No, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. Austin defunded the police and then refunded it. And refunded it by far more than they defunded it. Because they just course corrected. They went, okay, this is not working. We have to do something to fix it, which makes me very happy. Because I was really shocked that they wanted to do that. Because there's a lot of crime. And where my club is on 6th Street, that's a wild place. 6th Street gets wild. And there's a lot of crime there. And there's a good police presence there. And we have a lot of police at the club. We hire off-duty cops to work the club. And a lot of security. We want to make it as safe as possible. But the streets in the city, like, you know, from pandemic on, it's not good. You know, it's sketchy. And I'm glad they recognized it and did something.
Well,
because so many places just aren't course correcting.
Chicago.
Yeah.
I mean, not just the places where, I mean, murders have been happening way out of control in Chicago among the African American community for far too long, and not really reported in the way that they should be. It's amazing how black lives don't seem to matter when they're taken by black lives.
Right.
But I mean, now Chicago, my friends who live there say it's not safe anywhere.
Yeah, it's very sketchy. Very sketchy.
And that's Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago used to be great. It used to be easy. It used to be a great city. I mean, it always had problems in some areas, but I mean, even those areas. I had a conversation once with a driver who was a former cop, and what he told me is that they arrested all the key drug players, and then there was a power struggle, and things got way worse. He's like, their idea was like, go in, arrest the big kingpins, and then we'll clean up the city. It didn't work at all. The opposite had an effect. It was the opposite effect. There was way more crime. He said it just got way more violent.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the murders that happen are over nonsense. You know, somebody dissed you on social media or made fun of your sneakers or some shit. I mean, some of it is drug turf and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think some of it is just bullshit. And I don't understand why there isn't a more concerted effort to shine a spotlight on that. And where are the leaders of the community? The people who would have such cachet among those young African American men, because that's who's killing each other.
Yeah.
Young African American men, to say, cut it out. What the fuck are you doing, killing each other? If there was a concerted effort by people in the music industry, people in sports, who they look up to, wouldn't that have an effect?
I don't know. You know, at this point,
worth a try?
Worth a try, sure. Worth something. I mean, something needs to be done. I'm not the guy to figure out what needs to be done.
Let me say this very clearly for anyone who hasn't gotten the message yet. The Democratic Party, the left, liberals, whatever you want to call them, they do not care about you or me, the average American. If they did, they would be trying to address these socioeconomic problems that we have. They don't care. I can think of two things just off the top of my head, and of course, it's a longer discussion on how to repair the socioeconomic ills of the country. But a big problem in poor communities is the quality of schools that are available. School choice, right? What side is fighting for that? And why are we fighting for that? Why is that just not unanimous? School choice. The parents get a certain amount of money because each child, as they go through school, is allotted a certain amount of money by the state. Instead, let the parents allocate that to the school that they want their child to go to. right there, you're having children in a bad socioeconomic situation going to better schools, and that immediately puts them in a much better situation than they were in previously. Second, fund the police and let them do their jobs. Of course, we always keep our eye on them and we make sure no one's getting out of control, but this defund idea, or fund social workers instead of cops, or police reform, broad police reforms, that's all proposed by the left. Let's say you are in a poor community and you're doing everything right. You're working multiple jobs. You're taking care of a family. You're taking care of your responsibilities as a good citizen. How would you feel if your neighborhood that's already infested with crime tells you, you know what, we hate the police, so we're gonna have less of them here. And by the way, because of the George Floyd or the Ferguson effect, police are now more scared to intervene on crime. How would you feel if you're doing all the right things and you're living the right way? That's who gets punished in this. And again, where are these ideas coming from? The left. They do not care about you and me. And let me also be very clear. This is a socioeconomic problem. Miss me with that race shit, okay? Throughout my entire life, from a child onward until about 5 years ago, I was told essentially to be colorblind, to look at someone for their character, look at the individual. Don't notice skin color when you're evaluating someone, whether they're going to be your friend or your enemy. You know what I mean? Not enemy, but whether they're cool or they're not cool. Is that a better way of saying it? But as our society became more and more colorblind and people realized that this is the way to live your life, the race hustlers said, wait a second, if everyone becomes colorblind, we're all out of a job. So they then made saying, I'm colorblind, an offensive thing somehow. Now, if you say I'm colorblind, well, no, you're not. I mean, you could see my skin color. That's what the race hustlers would do because they want to keep us divided and they want to keep making money off the pain and suffering of Black Americans. But to say now, hey, I'm colorblind, I don't care about that stuff. The race hustlers will suggest that by saying that, you're not acknowledging the horrific history of slavery. They keep changing the definitions of things. Just on that same subject and a little off the point, I remember when racism was judging someone by the color of their skin. But as people began to do that less and less, judge people by the color of skin, again, there's a machine at work that wants us all divided, right? So now, again, this has only come up in like the last 5 years. I was raised to not pay attention to the color of someone's skin because that's racist. Now they've changed the definition to say it's not about just judging someone by the color of their skin. It's about a power imbalance. What are you talking about? So now they want to add these variables in there that make it harder and harder to pin down exactly when you've succeeded in, minimizing racism. So it's harder to gauge. They just want to keep this lie that America's a racist country going. And that's a good place to stop. I'm going to end by saying America's not a racist country. And most of us are just doing what we need to do to take care of our families and live a good life. That's something all Americans have in common. When you're doing that, you're not thinking about skin color. So race hustlers, find a new gig, find some new cause, be an activist for something else. Because I will speak for all races here and say, we're sick of it. We don't want it anymore, okay? Thank you. Anyway, that's it for today's show. If you like videos of watching leftists get owned, then click on one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. Otherwise, really appreciate you being here today. I'll see you on the next one.